We are officially live. We are live on today. What are we live on? We're live on YouTube. So, my YouTube family, thank you for joining. Also, to my X family, for those of you that identify as X, my Twitter family. Also, Kick and Rumble. Those are some of my my new ventures. I'm spreading my footprint. But thank you for being here. And we are doing actually podcast number 54. Is it 54? Yeah, we're doing 54. But before we get into that, just want to do some really cool housekeeping things. Today's episode is brought to you by, let me rewind that. Let's go back. There we go. Got to record on my device. So, family, today's episode is brought to you by One Shot Energy. They are energy drops with a purpose. And it's a great way to take care of your voice, also for focus and energy. For those of you that maybe you are a musician, maybe you're a streamer, live streamer like this, what we're doing today. Maybe you're a gamer. Maybe you are a Twitter X Spaces host. Maybe you're someone that likes to talk a lot. Maybe you're a public speaker, you're a pastor, preacher, teacher, and you do public events. Go to oneshotenergy.com. That's the number one, oneshotenergy.com. And one of the cool things that I like is that they have these low sugar lozenges, which are their voice drops. I do a lot of speaking, a lot of things where I use my voice a lot, what we're doing right now. And those voice drops are a great way to offer support in that area. They also have marshmallow licorice root, slippery elm bark, peppermint oils to help with a little bit of that cooling effect. And of course, it's got a little bit of the antioxidants and prebiotics already in the product itself. OneShotEnergy.com. Be sure at promo code section, you use AMB gLO, that's gLO, and you'll get 10% off the entire order. Our new shirts are up as well. My wife is our graphic designer, and she came up with some really cool designs. Aloha Volume 8 is up. She also created a graphic, which is Kulia I Kanu'u, which is strive for the highest. If you want the history on that, go to our website, therealglo.com, click on merchandise. It'll take you right there. Some really cool colors. And actually for the ladies, we've got Sweet Aloha for the ladies as well. Some of the colors are royal blue, navy blue, midnight, classic red, heathered royal, true pink, and deep purple. That's just an example of some of the colors you can get on our website on the merchandise portal. I think that's all we got in the way of announcements. Today's title, family, is Words Matter. And I'm going to make the case and the argument today as we do this podcast, as we do this live stream recording, that words do matter, that the words that we speak, the words that we actually verbalize when we speak to one another, they literally have the power of death and life. And that's based out of scripture. So for anybody that wants to know what I'm talking about, we'll be back in 41 seconds. You're watching gLO Sessions podcast number 54. Before we get into the actual words matter, I just want to say thank you again for those of you that are joining live and even those on the replay as well. As far as, let me look at my numbers real quick. So I forgot to put up Twitch. Give me a second. I'm going to put up Twitch on there. I totally forgot. Let's add Twitch. Where is my Twitch family? There we go. Twitch, you are officially live with us. I totally forgot about Twitch. I'm so sorry, Twitch family. But before we get into the words matter, I wanted to just real quickly, for those of you that actually use Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, we have a live stream community on there. We've been building it. And I promised our community when we hit 200 members, we are going to celebrate by doing a giveaway. And I want to thank Archon Mounts. They are one of my partners that I've been working with since 2015 it's been a while. And I just want to thank them for sponsoring giveaways. It's not cheap. I think over the course of our partnership, and it's not all for me, obviously, but they've given well over $35,000 worth of equipment in giveaways and promotions, public events. They sponsored. I did this one public speaking event where they actually twice where they sponsored products and they gave me a whole box of goodies to do giveaways. And so we're in 2024, and I'm glad that I'm still with them. So we're going to be giving away 3 tripods from Archon Mounts as a part of those of you that are participating in that live stream community. So I want to just thank you. I'm going to acknowledge some comments real quick. I got Twitch in here. Dr. John is hoping to win. You are a winner already. And American Boomer is in here. What's up, my brother? He called me out on my podcast hotline number. So people that are like, hey, bro, I thought you was in Hawaii. Well, I use my podcast hotline, and I'll put it up in a somewhere in the chat at some point. We're actually going to do call-ins today. So I've been kind of trying to prep some of our social media audience to, hey, call in this number. And it sounds like I'm begging. And if it does, I am. I want people to call in. I want to hear your stories. I just want to hear your voice. So I'll put that up in the chat at some point. So that's that. I just want to say thank you. And so we did hit 200 members in our live stream community. We're bouncing back and forth, but in our live stream community, we hit 200. So we're going to do a giveaway sponsored by Archon Mounts, and we have other products and services being offered via Wayland Indoor Farmer with his team or community of people. So we haven't finalized the details on that. I just know it's going to be epic. It's going to be costly in the area of time. So I'm very grateful for people that are connecting with us and partnering with us just in building a community. So if you're not comfortable live streaming, that's okay. Join the community. It's called a live stream community X on Twitter. So for those of you that are interested. So what else are we going to talk about? I'll go right into it, man. Like death and life, they're in the power of the tongue. And the verse is that those who love it will eat its fruit. And I was going through my socials today, and the topic kept coming up on how we carry ourselves. How do we speak, right? And the things that we say, what do they actually carry weight? Do they actually carry authority? And that little passage, that verse I just shared with you is out of Proverbs 18:31 or 18 verse 21. It says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And there was a saying when I was younger, I can't remember how old I was, but it said that, what's the word, big bird? And I never knew what that meant. I still don't know what it means, but I always found it catchy. I always thought it was interesting. Somebody, what's the word, big bird? They'll say stuff like, so in Hawaii, we'll say, how's it, my brother? How you doing, bro? It's good to see you. So we all have a way of greeting and how to just kind of welcome one another, right? If you come into my home, obviously it's going to be words of life, words of affirmation, but we're going to give you hugs too, right? And the one thing that got my attention when I was making notes for today was there are literal words that can start a nuclear war. There are phrases and words that, if not interpreted properly, it can literally start a nuclear war. And if you don't know who Annie Jacobson is, I'm going to share a little bit of information on her in just a second, but I'm going to share one more verse just for foundational purposes. And it says that in James chapter 3, I'm not going to read the verse verbatim, but our tongue is like a fire, and it's literally like the rudder of a ship. So if you picture like a ship, right? Let's say Matson container, barge, they have all these huge ships, right? All these things that bring your products and services. Well, there's this tiny little rudder at the bottom back end of the ship. If it just turns one direction, 1 degree, like the wrong way, it can literally run into the reef or run into land or even steer into the wrong place. And it's interesting how our tongue, it literally is like the rudder of a ship. I'll give an example. It can change the course of a nation. It really can. And I'm not just talking about American politics. I'm talking about even throughout history. One wrong thing spoken can literally. Let me share some numbers with you. Annie Jacobson, she has quite a number of books. One of the books is on nuclear war, and she says that within a matter of hours, the entire world can be destroyed simply by a misunderstanding of words. So when the president, now we're talking about the United States, when the president of the United States gets a response of an impending nuclear attack, according to her book and her research, she's an investigative journalist. So for those that are wanting reference, her name is Annie Jacobson. After this response, he's got 6 minutes to come up with something. And then within 72 minutes, all of the nukes are going to be airborne, depending on the type of attack. So one of the things that she talks about, and these are all based on, meeting with people that are government officials. If North Korea were to launch one nuke, we launch whatever. It can be 60, 70, right? So I'm going to read some comments real quick, and I'll get back to what I'm talking about. So American Boomer says, if only everyone understood Ohana. I agree. And Dr. John said, we were close in the 60s. We were. And I can't remember all the details of the story, but I know there's this one Russian individual in government in Russia. There was a conversation that was not either being held or not being held. So it goes along the lines of what I'm talking about, where words have literal meaning, whether we understand them or interpret them in the way that it was delivered. I'm going to try to put the pieces together. I'm going to try to connect the dots. But this Russian individual, I'll just say diplomat, basically averted nuclear war between Russia and the United States. It was all because of a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. And that's where I talked about words can literally steer the course of a nation, right? And even Annie Jacobson talked about within a matter of minutes, from an interpretation of events, which includes words, because words are included, we have to communicate, right? Groupthink and miscommunication is what Dr. John just mentioned. And by the way, family, if you don't know who Dr. John is, he's on our YouTube channel, and he's been so gracious. He's been one of our guests as well. One of the things he says is groupthink and miscommunication. But this Russian diplomat had literally helped avert a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. So within 6 minutes of receiving this word, the president of the United States has to make a decision. And within 72 minutes, we can literally be French toast, like we can be fried, right? And it all stems to the language. It all stems to communication, language. You put the wrong words on the bathroom door, and you can get into some really big trouble. So I'm going to say it again. I wrote this down. I read, I'm like, what did I mean by that? You put the wrong words on a bathroom door, and you can get into some really big trouble. And this is not getting political, but it is funny when I look at some of these bumper stickers, and there's this bumper sticker that says, if you are an individual that belongs in this bathroom, and it shows like a male figure, and I see you jump into this bathroom. It has a picture of the women's bathroom with my daughter in this bathroom. And then the last part of the bumper sticker shows, then you will be needing to go into this bathroom in the near future. And it shows a bathroom with the handicap sticker, which that was interesting. There's these other stickers here in Oregon where it says, these are legitimate. I'll take a picture and I'll share it on my socials. But the sticker shows, it shows like a male figure, a female figure, and then it just says, oh, whatever, just wash your hands. And it has a picture of a Sasquatch walking into the bathroom. And but yeah, you put the wrong words on the bathroom door, and you get into some really big trouble, some massive big trouble. And here's what I wrote for my notes: is why language and context is important. And culture, not race, can play a role in language and ultimately words. While I agree with that, there's a lot of things that I say as someone being from Hawaii. If I go up to people here and I say, "What, bro?" They may not understand the context, but the words, they may kind of get an idea, like what, bra. They think, okay, is that what, brazier, or bra as a brother person? So there's a definite importance of understanding the context and the language. That's why words matter, and the context of how we say it. And also, I can even add regional. That's why a lot of people from Hawaii, I'm going to share a story. I'm going to share a few stories today. So, for anybody that wants a roadmap of what today's going to look like, we're going to have a few stories. I'm going to share a little bit of my heart. I'm going to ground everything in obviously some scripture to make sure that I'm got the right blueprint, right? So, we build this conversation properly and correctly. But a lot of people that move from Hawaii, when they leave Hawaii and they live in whatever state or they meet a different country, when they come back, we already know this brother has been off island for a minute, because the way that they carry themselves. And as a kid, I used to live far away from the mainland. Far away from Hawaii. I used to live on the East Coast as a kid. But I'm typical born and raised Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino. But when we moved to the South, I had to adapt the way that I spoke. I had to literally change the way that I spoke. And I even had to change some of the words that I used. And it's not because I wanted to deny myself. I didn't want to deny my native Hawaiian or whatever. It was just that the people they wouldn't be able to understand what I was trying to say. So I had to adapt a little bit of how I spoke. Context, I had to slow down a little bit. Even today, I still speak fast depending on who I'm with. And so a lot of times, even in our language, when we adapt or we change the words, I'm going to make the argument today that there are some words that should not be changed. I'm not going to talk about it, but one of the ones, I didn't do any notes on it, but one of the words that have become a political statement or political word, and anybody in the other social channels, you can comment on it. If you want, comment in the comment section. For those in live, you can if you want to. But the word woke, that's one terminology, woke. There's another called woke mind virus. It's funny how words have an original intent or original meaning, and then they get restructured for another purpose. And I was in a few conversations on social media, I think on Twitter, on X, where the word woke had become coined or owned by an ethnic group as their conversation, their word. And while I agree that some of those words like woke or even the woke mind virus, I don't even know what that means. Like I looked it up and I'm like, okay, these are just words to put together to describe something or an agenda, right? But as a kid in grade school, my understanding of woke was I woke up. So if that's what you're saying in the root word and root definition, I get it. Now, there are other things that are added to that are politicized or used to manipulate a conversation. Like if I was to say right now, I'm a woke individual, like that already becomes a political statement. Or at least that's how I interpret it. And so going into this conversation of words matter, they do matter, and understanding the root definition. Now, for an ethnic group to take ownership of something, I think it gets, to me, it gets difficult to have a conversation about something like that if you don't know. Maybe like for me, I don't identify as an African American. I don't identify as an African. I don't identify as a quote unquote black person. I don't identify as any of those things. I identify as a Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino. That's what I am. I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino. I'm a dude, right? So I don't identify as Asian. I don't identify as brown or white or yellow. I don't identify as yellow. And it's interesting. Here's the funny thing about words. If you ask Chat GPT, because I have Chat GPT, we have Chat GPT installed on our Discord servers. If you ask Chat GPT, why is it okay to call a person of European descent that lives in the United States a white person? Why is that okay? And there's a whole lengthy conversation. And then ask another question: why is it okay to call someone that is of African descent that lives in the United States black? Why is that okay? And then they went through a whole definition. And then I said, why is it not okay to call someone that is of Asian descent, quote unquote Asian, that lives in the United States, yellow, red, so on and so on. And I found it interesting that according to ChatGPT, the only two colors that are permissible, maybe three, are white, black, and maybe brown, right? So I'll add to that there was another interesting discussion brought about. I can't remember his name, but he's a heavy political person on YouTube, a black dude. But he said his kids are not black. And he said, and I'm going to probably misquote this, I'm going to have to fact check myself later. But he says, my kids are not black. He said, my wife is white. I'm black, but that doesn't make my kids black. And so I watched further, and he says that my kids are biracial. They're not black. He says, however, there are certain political groups that would want you to put your kids on one side of the aisle. So, and I listened to this conversation, and he said that there are some groups that if a black guy marries a white girl, instantly, immediately, the kids are already considered black. And that's like okay. But what is not okay is to consider them white. And I never thought about it that way, but I found that to be true in a lot of conversations. Like I've never really heard of. Now, in all fairness, I think it will also depend on the facial features. So I'm going to pick on myself for a second. My nose is not pointy. I don't have a pointy nose. My calves and my quads, my thighs, they're definitely a lot. They're not your typical Filipino. I have more Polynesian features in certain areas. Now, if you look at my facial features, it's definitely not strong on the Hawaiian or Filipino side. Well, I'll mix Filipino Chinese, okay? But there are some dead giveaways for someone that is Polynesian or Hawaiian, and it's certain visual features. Now, you put me up against like my wife, for example. You already know my wife is like, oh, she's legit, like Hawaiian, Samoan, Tongan, whatever you would think in that. And you look at me, you'd be like, I know he looks kind of like he's from an island or something. But so in all fairness, the people that are like biracial, like what this YouTuber said, that his kids are not black, they are biracial, they're black and white. Those words are very important. So going back to the ChatGPT, how ChatGPT said that it's not okay to call Chinese, Japanese people yellow because it has a negative connotation or a negative history. I would beg to differ that calling a African American or someone that has a lineage from the continent of Africa, to call them black, to me, I have a hard time with that when I really sit and think about it. To say the word black or blacks, it sounds derogatory to me. It really does. And it's almost derogatory for me to call someone that's of European descent white, because I feel like I'm denying them of their ethnic background. So I had a guest who is from Serbia. Okay, her name was Irina Dorjic, and we had a discussion about ethnicity and race. And I asked her, like, how would you know if someone is Serbian versus Bosnian or Croatian? And she said something really interesting. She said, you would not know. You would not know unless you're like one of us. Or so I told her, well, I can walk into a room with Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and I would know who's who. I can walk into a room with Hawaiians, Samoans, and Tongans, and I could kind of narrow it down and figure it out. And so I found it interesting that, going back to the ChatGPT, I keep going sideways on that ChatGPT would say this is not okay to say this or that. But I would make the argument that to limit people to blacks or whites, for me, that's derogatory. That's how I interpret. That's how I would never walk into a person and say, hey, you're a black guy. And like, first of all, they're not this color. I don't know anybody that's this color. Like my boys, because of the Puerto Rican in them, and of course the Polynesian blood, they get pretty dark. They get darker than a lot of people that are quote unquote black people that I know, but they're still not black. So I have a problem with that word, with the language of black. Not so much black because I use it, but when I hear someone say the blacks, I have a problem with that. I literally have a problem with the word the blacks. I don't understand it. I don't understand how it's okay. Or even the whites. because there's so much ethnic backgrounds or ethnicities mixed into that. I have a very good friend of mine, Dr. Vanessa Battle. She has farms. I did a podcast with her. She is a UN representative. She's also a teacher, pastor, but she owns farms in, I think, 6 different locations in West Africa. And even I learned that there are many different ethnicities, but also countries, right? So Africa is just a continent. So to put into perspective, I struggle with calling people the blacks or the whites, and it all stems to what we're talking about today. That words do matter. For me, I identifying not to separate, but to celebrate. And I hate saying it like that, but not just to identify, but to celebrate like who we are, right? And words are important. I'm going to stick to my notes here. So here's the next part I want to talk about. Are love languages real? And for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, the book, The 5 Love Languages, I think it was written by Gary Chapman. He talked about the 5 love languages. And I've talked about this several times on podcasts and through guests, but I want to fix on one where words of affirmation. One of my kids, words of affirmation, that fills up his love tank. Words of affirmation makes him feel like $1 million, like literally. You say the right word to him, he'll go to the ends of all the entire earth just for you, right? And so now the other son, his is more touch. He needs that physical, right? So here's some of the words that I listed is I love you, thinking of you, appreciate you. And that word, no matter where you are, right? Some people don't respond to I love you the same way. And I say it a lot. I say it after every episode, every podcast. I always say I love you. I don't know if you guys catch that, but I always say the same thing. Thank you for your time, hearts, data, all the good stuff. And what's important, thank you for your time. On behalf of my family, just want to say, love you guys. God bless you guys. I always say love you, right? So some people, it has some weight to it and some it doesn't. But here's another one that I've been really practicing lately is thinking of you. And some people just need to be thought of, right? So once in a while, I'll text somebody or I'll send them a DM. Hey, I just want you, I've been thinking about you, man. And I just want to say, I've been thinking about you and I'm praying for you. Just want you to know that. Yeah. Dr. John on YouTube said that Gottmans use these words. I'm gonna have to Google that because unless he wants to explain it in the chat. The other one is, and this one's interesting. Check this out. Appreciate you. I've been getting a lot of that here in Oregon. People that I don't even know. If I do something for them or they'll just say, hey man, I want to let you know I appreciate you. Like strangers, open the door for them. Hey man, I appreciate you. I'm like, I appreciate you too. But there are certain words that matter that are very thoughtful. And to go back into the word woke, wokeism, woke mind virus, I'm wondering when, and I'm just talking about United States history, when is it okay for us to take a word and rephrase it and change it for something that doesn't necessarily mean the original root definition? And I'll tell you this, because I am multi-ethnic, if that's even a word. Oh, Gottmans do couples therapy. Got it. Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. John. So being multi-ethnic, in Hawaii, we say aloha. And if you're from New Zealand, they say kia ora, or it's spelled Kiaora. So in New Zealand, they say kia ora. In Hawaii, we say aloha. In Samoa, they say talofa, right? Where else do they say? In Korea, they say annyeonghaseyo, something to that effect. If you're in Japan, for the good morning, they say ohayo gozaimasu. Chinese. I don't know what xie. But what am I getting at? There are certain words that you cannot change what it means, right? You cannot, especially if it has an agenda that maybe separates one group from another. And I'm just talking. I have no facts to support this. This is just me sharing my heart. The word aloha in itself is a very intimate greeting as a hello or goodbye. Kia ora, which is the same, which is Maori in New Zealand. There are some words that I don't believe that we should change the definition to support something that. Now, if it's something fun, like in Hawaii, a good example is we take a word or words, and my wife hates this, by the way. I'm going to say it. But yes, sir, is something that you would hear in a traditional Caucasian language, right? Yes, sir. In Hawaii, we say yes, sir. Because I say that if you listen to me every time I end my broadcast, I always say yes, sir. But in the past 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years, people have been adding the word blessa. So it's a derivative of yes, sir, but with the word blessings. So they added yes, bless us. So I don't even know what that really means. I just know you say yes, bless us. So yes, blessings. And I don't even know if that's even offensive in any other language. But it does take the root definition of a word and not necessarily change it, but I think it adds to. My wife hates it. I don't use it personally, but I do use the word yes, right? So here's a question I ask you, family, and we're going to pause on this for a second because I want to play a couple of call-ins, this is a fun thing. But before we get into the call-ins, it will take a side departure for a second. Is what are your cultural greetings? And if you're from the United States, believe it or not, there's different cultural greetings where you're from. Okay, so perfect example in the South, they say howdy y'all or hey y'all, right? So what are your cultural greetings? And are your cultural greetings so powerful in the sense that you can't change them for an agenda or so forth? So I'm going to say that one more time. What are your cultural greetings? What do you have that are your cultural greetings? And so we're going to take a side departure for a second. I want to play these for, I don't even know the word. So let's put it up on here. So for those that are my podcast listeners, you're going to hear something very interesting. And as soon as I find the phone number, I'll put it up on here. Here we go, voice. So I have a podcast hotline. Okay. And so for those of you that are with me live, you may see it, you may not. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Just make it big. Make it bigger. Okay, so I'm gonna play some. I'll play one from Brother Dan. Dan Roeder out of X/Twitter. He left a very thoughtful voice message. So I'm gonna play that for a second, and then we'll go. I've done this live before, but this is the first time I'm doing it for my podcast. So I want you guys to listen to Dan from, I think he's from Washington. Well, he's in Washington right now. Here we go.
Hey, Greg, this is Dan Roeder, and I am a education specialist and nonprofit leader for David Z Foundation. We've spoken a few times on a few different live streams, and I guess the one thing I wanted to ask, which is a giant can of worms, is where do you think education is going? So here's a couple of thoughts that I have. And having been in the classroom teaching the last 8 to 12 years, if you count subbing, I have seen that we really need to be attending a lot more to the humans in the classroom and how we are all acting as a classroom community, as a school community, as a district, as counties, as cities, and really attending to that a lot more so than just memorizing things. And that's unfortunately what I see is still a focus, especially with standardized testing. And this may be a hot take, but I think we always have to have that care for the humans in the room before we can even be ready to learn something that we're told we need to know. So a couple ways we can do that is, number one, start with interest and engagement. And number two, follow up with authentic relationships and engaging through those interests and through where those interests intersect. So Greg, I'm just super curious, what do you think is coming up in education?
So I do apologize for my live audience, but I probably cut you guys out a little bit. So Dan out there in Washington, he's an educator, and I actually did a couple of live streams with him. And I answered this question live already on X. But this is for my podcast guys. These are guys on Apple, YouTube podcasts, Spotify. And the question was, what do I think is coming up in education? And I answered it. I'll do the short version. And the short version is, I believe in education. Technology is advancing in such a way that it's we can't keep up, right? We can't keep up with it. And so the adapting with that technology for me and my family was, homeschooling. And I think that's one of the most amazing. I highly recommend that for anybody that's considering, having a more active role in teaching your own kids, is homeschooling. So, yeah, that's what I'll say in regards to that. And I apologize for my live audience. I won't play around with it anymore. I keep resizing it, playing with the size of the video. And for those that are hanging out with me and like, why is he bouncing around? I'm playing these call-ins for a purpose, and part of it is supporting what I'm talking about today, how words matter. And I'll play one more. I got brother Barry Schaefer, and he's from X. If you want to follow him on X, it's Barry Schaefer on X on Twitter. So let's play his real quick.
Hey gLO, this is Barry Schaefer, BARRYSHAFER. I saw your post on X, and I just wanted to wish you and your family a blessed and wonderful week ahead. That's all. Thanks.
Well, thank you to Barry Schaefer. We are actually on a couple of group DMs on Twitter, on X. And thank you, Barry. Appreciate that. Very heartfelt. And that actually put a couple of deposits in my love tank for the day that people are willing to. And I asked people, of course, hey, call into my podcast hotline. I would love to hear from you. So thank you, Barry, for that. And little things like that, family. In the book of James, I talked about in James chapter 3, where it says that our tongue is like a fire, right? It can literally set things on fire. It can steer the course of a nation, steers the course of a ship. And so giving words of encouragement like that are a blessing. And we're going to do this podcast kind of short, because typically when I'm by myself, I don't go on and on and on unless I got someone to go back and forth. But we'll do one more call in. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's put that on hold, because that's a cool one. That's from a friend of mine. So let's remove this one. But I want to talk about some about words, and then migrate that to actually names. So the reason why I'm doing this today is that there are some things that I was thinking about this past week, and I took some notes on it. And one of the things I remember, I was live here on this platform, or multiple platforms actually, and I went live to celebrate an event, which was I don't even remember the actual. I just remember we went to Pearl Harbor. I went live on Pearl Harbor. And I remember how emotional it was that day, because there was this guy there who was the last remaining survivor from the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And then later on in that day, we went to the National Cemetery of the Pacific, which is in an area, what we call Punch Bowl, which is in Honolulu. And it's an actual crater, an old crater, volcanic crater. But in this cemetery, they have these memorials and historical displays. And I remember going live, and I just said, you know what, family, and I was live. I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to read these names on these plaques, on these, and there were thousands of names. And I remember I started reading the names And I started reading the families that were attached to this individual, like survived by so and so, so and so. And I remember within minutes, I couldn't finish. I could not. I couldn't finish. I kept trying to read the names, and I had to take a break. And I was live, and I said, "Family, just give me a second." And for some reason, when I read the names of these fallen heroes, I remember how blessed I was and how much of an honor it was for me to read their names out loud, to say their names. And to this day, when I think back about that, I'm like, why did I break up? Well, why was it so emotional for me? And part of it was when I said their names out loud and I vocalized, because I can't remember how many people were watching, but I think by the end of the day, there was, for that whole event that we did, there was probably, I don't know, I'm just throwing some crazy number, at least 50,000 people total that witnessed us live streaming. We got brother Joshua Busby out there on Twitter, on X, watching. Thank you for joining, bro. I appreciate you. We did a podcast with him, by the way. He's actually the guest from the one before this podcast. But as I was reading the names of those fallen soldiers and getting choked up about it, it felt so good to read their names, to honor them. And I don't know if their families were able to ever see. I don't know. But it was such an honor to read their names. You know? And I in the area of words matter, I also want to make this declaration that names matter as well. Names matter tons. I'm going to share this story about my wife. But when I'm not going to go back and forth about my wife's story, but you know, for those that know us, we're not supposed to have kids at all. Like doctor said, no kids after the surgery, no kids, right? So long story short, we have 4. We have a few babies in heaven. But when she started to name our kids, I'm going to share this story again, and I apologize for those of you that have heard this story. Zoe Mana Okamea Uiloa. I'm going to say it one more time. I'm so proud of this name. Zoe Mana Okamea Uiloa. Such a beautiful name. But I won't go into detail of all the names, but basically my daughter's name means life, bringer of joy. To this day, she is that person that brings joy. Beauty of the heavens, that's what her name means. Like, so manna, for those that don't know, manna is like literally bread from heaven. So every day we have fresh manna, right, in our daughter. So I'm going to use my other son as contrast. So my other son, his name is Gregory Isaac Makakoa. Okay, so that's his without the last name. So Gregory Isaac Makakoa. Wise warrior, watchful one, right? Watchful, wise warrior. So here's the whole premise of what I'm talking about. How words matter, names matter, declarations into that matters. My daughter Zoe, when she was 1, you know, with babies, they're kind of wobbly, right? They're kind of wobbly back and forth. She'd always fall back and she would hit her head on the ground. And that's just how, because she did everything robustly, if that's even the right word. She did it like just vibrant, like she was always like, you know. Zoe's the one that would touch the register at the grocery store. She would she'd hit all the buttons on the cash register with, "Zoe, stop, what are you doing?" And she would just smile really big because that was her. She wanted to do everything. Everything was all about doing something for the first time. I'm just going to do it, even if it means I'm going to get hurt. So that included with her wobbling and falling back and hitting her head. And however, my other son, Gregory Isaac Makakoa, because he's very wise and watchful, very careful, calculated, analytical, he figured out at the same age, when he got wobbly, what did he do? He put his hand up and he would stop himself from falling back. He figured that out. And when I saw that, I remember telling my wife, I said, wow, such a unique contrast between the two of them. And then it took me back to the times when my wife was weeping, she was crying, she was travailing before God and saying, "God, I want to have children. This is what I want in my kids. I want my kids to have this, this, and this." And she wrote it out and she declared it. And we even declared it, we verbalized it. The names matter. The way, the characteristics that she pleaded in those dark times, in those times where she was praying and just weeping in her spirit and said, Lord, I want to have kids. I want to have children. Would you bless my kids with this? And guess what happened? God honored that. Hey, Sarah, good to see you out there on Twitch. So words matter. Names matter. Like, I'm not going to name my daughter Jezebel. Believe me, I'm not going to name my I'm not going to name my I'm not going to name my kids after certain people. I'm not going to name my kids Genghis Khan. I'm not going to name them Jeffrey Dahmer. There are certain things that do matter. And I know we're talking a lot about words and names, and I have a ton of other stories. I'm going to share a little bit of reference for psychological. Such a lovely name, Jezebel. I'm sure somebody thinks the name is Sarah. Sarah on Twitch said Jezebel, and maybe it is. I don't know. But scripturally, I don't like it. So I'm going to share something from psychology today. It is from Donnelly Marcus, who has a PhD in psychology. And she said that language is a neurocognitive tool by which we can transmit and exchange information, influence and control the behavior of others, establish and demonstrate social cohesion, and imagine and create new ways of experiencing life. I'll agree with the clinical definitions because I think some of it makes sense. And you guys know me, I love psychology. For some strange reason, I've had a good number of psychologists. I've had 4 already. So I'm definitely looking forward to having a neuroscientist, which I already had asked Dr. Carolyn Leaf. So if anybody knows her personally, do me a favor. Can you tell her, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, can you please answer Greg's email? He sent you an email in July. So please, thank you. So Matthew 12:37, check this out. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. That's out of Matthew. It's out of for anybody that reads or doesn't read the Bible. It's very true, right? So not only do words matter, but by the audience of who is around us, it matters too. So good example. In general, if you're in a court of law and a judge asks you a question, unless you're unable to speak, you have to say something. You have to say, yes, Your Honor. You have to say, if the judge asks you, what do you plead? You can't just go, you have to say something, right? You have to make a declaration. It'll either justify you or it'll condemn you, or you condemn yourself, right? So in that sense of words, how words matter, and that's our topic for today. Words matter, names matter, declarations matter. I pulled the trigger early on that word declaration, but I'll pull it back and we'll talk about it at the end. But there are certain words that are authoritative by nature. And one of the most authoritative words that can ever be uttered will be from what I believe is from God, from the Lord himself. In Jeremiah 1:9, it says that the Lord stretched out his hand, touched my mouth. The Lord said to me, behold, I put my words in your mouth. The Lord put his words in my mouth. Here's a good example. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching too much, but you ever had so as a kid, I used to get into a lot of little mini I'll call them mini altercations because I was a kid. But I remember getting into a few fights and mini altercations. And I remember the neighborhood kids I would get into these mini altercations with. One of the phrases would be like, you just wait. You just wait until I'm going to get my dad. And the minute somebody brings their dad into the equation, for some reason, it's different. I don't know what it is, but it's different, right? It's different when someone else brings their dad into the picture. I don't know what it is. I'm going to get my dad. I think in today's times, it's probably not the same like when I was growing up. But the minute somebody said, you know what, I'll get my dad. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm not serious. Yeah. I'm going to read the scripture that was shared from one of our viewers, our listeners, Sarah, out there in Newfoundland, Canada, on Twitch, that Proverbs 15:4 says, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perseverance in it breaks the spirit. Very true, Sarah. I appreciate that. Of course, Brother Josh is he's preaching as well. But the minute that someone brings their parents into the equation, say, okay, hold on, I'm just kidding, bro. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No need to call your father. But here's another example in relation to that scripture of the authoritative words. I'm not a historian by any means, so you guys can fact check me. But in the days of old, I'm going to use that language. In the days of old, whenever someone would come into wherever, let's say a guy is coming into the land of, he wants to, I don't know, collect taxes. Let's just use that example. He'll hold up a paper. By order of Lord so-and-so, so-and-so, I hereby declare you're going to give me taxes or whatever. And it was by the declaration of this document, these words, that this person would walk into a town or a city and say, by declaration of Lord so-and-so, King so-and-so, you're hereby ordered to do this and this. And I thought about, wow, our words, depending who you are, carry a certain level of authority. One of the things that we've heard this many, many times before is, and it's out of scripture, it says, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. In Hawaii, I say a lot, bro, don't be wishy-washy. And I don't know if they use that word any other place, but I use it, bro, don't be wishy-washy. It's either yes or no. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. I'll be honest, that is one of my pet peeves, is when I ask somebody a question and they say, yeah. And then the next thing you know is no, like they don't tell you. That does bother me on a personal level, but then I understand, hey, that's just maybe where they're at. But I want to encourage you guys, family, if you're one of those people where you say, yeah, I'll do it, and then you don't do it, be careful of the words that you speak, because the more that happens, you lose a sense of authority in the words that you carry. Yeah. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, according to Dr. John. Here's some definitions for you. And we're getting close to the 1 hour mark. I think we'll cut off the 1 hour because it's hot. I don't have my AC blowing in here, but I'm gonna persevere for you, family, and for those of you in Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You have no idea the sweat that I'm enduring just for you. But here we go. I had to look this up. The definition of word: noun, Old English words which is speech, talk, utterance, sentence, statement, news report. From a Proto-Germanic worda. I don't even know what that is. But, what else? Old High German word, Old Norse. So that's the noun definition. Here's the verb version of it, of the word word. To put into words. I'm going to read a comment from Sarah. She says, but also if you speak something, or if something is spoken over you enough, you start to believe it. Let's take a side departure real quick, and this is a funny one, okay? And we'll land the plane. I won't say who, because I don't want this to shape what people think about me as a podcaster or as a live streamer. But there was a very funny comedian who said, and family, this is not political. You can receive it however you want. I still think it's funny. He was talking about President Biden. He said that they've been telling him that he's been president for so long, for so many years. He finally believed that he's president, and now he doesn't want to relinquish his power. And I found that interesting that this comedian would say something like that. And it showed up in our political spectrum, right? Where what he said kind of makes sense, right? So what Sarah said was, if you speak something or something spoken over you enough, you start to believe it. That's so true what Sarah said, because I'll share a personal story in a teaching moment with my kids, and then we're going to go into the calls. We're going to go to the calls. We're going to do one last call in, and then we'll land the plane. So my kids were not listening to their mother. My wife was voicing her discontent with our sons not following directions and listening to her when I'm not home. So I pull my kids in the room with my wife, and we have this discussion. Now, because of the choices that my sons were making, I started to use some very strong words. And I was very deliberate in how I delivered these words. I made sure that I didn't tell them that's what they were. Okay. But some of the words that I used were stupidity, idiocy. So I use those words to describe the behavior that they had. Now, nowhere in our discussion did I ever say that that's who they were. However, my youngest son started to cry. He started to weep. And so I had to go do what they're supposed to do. When they came out, I pulled them in and I said, I just want to remind you, sons, boys, not once did I ever call you those names. And I said, however, the both of you are extremely intelligent. You both are genius. You guys don't understand how genius you are. You guys have some amazing ideas. You guys do some crazy, amazing things. I said, however, your behavior was showing me and your mother otherwise. That those were decisions and choices you made, not necessarily a reflection of your personal abilities or who you are. And you were created and you're able to do far greater than what you've been doing. And so I reminded them that I love you guys very much. However, your behavior, your choices cannot reflect what we talked about. And so Sarah's very right. In the words that we speak over one another and the declarations, and even with me and my wife, we've been together for 25 years. And I'm still learning that I've got to make those proper choices in the way that I speak over her as my wife. And even as myself, there are some things that she called into correction for me, things that I said publicly that she said, I don't know why you say that. You shouldn't say that about yourself. And a lot of times I will self-deprecate as a, I hope that's the right word, by the way. I hope this is the right. It came out like, did I say the right word? I self-deprecate a lot because there's little insecurity inside of me that is like, and it's not a legit heavy one, because trust me, I kind of don't care, but I kind of do. Where I'll self-deprecate. I hope I'm saying the right word, because I don't want someone else to do it for me. So if I do it first, then it's okay, right? So one more comment from Sarah out there on Twitch. It is important to choose which words you use to connect or discipline children too. Their minds are like sponges. Very much so. I totally agree. And so in the middle of my wife correcting me, and now I'm learning, even at my age, I'll be 50 years old pretty soon, is to understand that there are declarations and words that we use. If not properly corrected over time, it's exactly what Sarah said on Twitch. They're going to believe that at some point. They may not verbally say, hey, I agree with that, but at some point they're going to believe that's who I am, or that's who they think I am, right? Let's do call-ins real quick. I'm going to land the plane. You should speak over yourself. That's what Josh said on Twitter, on X. We're going to do one last call-in, and I want to encourage you guys to call in. If anybody wants to call in, what's my number? I don't even know what the number is. Let me go find a number real quick, and I'll post it up. I don't even know my own call-in number. I should have it. Okay, so if anybody wants to call in and leave me a nice cushy, not cushy, what's the word? Nice gush? I don't even know the word. What the heck? Words matter, girl. If you want to leave me a nice, thoughtful message, or if you got a question, here's the number: 541-903-8327. That's 541-903-8327. And you can leave a nice, thoughtful message. I agree, Josh. You will believe what you say. So let's play one more. This is the last one. This is from my friend Tala, who left a very short message, mind you. It's only 15 seconds. And we all know, if you know who Tala is, her username is Tala_no excuses on Twitter. Let's go ahead and add her just to the page. She can talk for hours, but she left me a 15-second message, but we'll play it anyways. You know we love you, Tala. Here we go. Here we go.
You make it really difficult to troll you. So the best thing that I can share is that I am not dealing with fatigue anymore. I'm feeling a lot better since my trip. Don't know why, but I'm happy.
That's Tala with her 15 seconds. Brother, what the heck, Tala? 15 seconds, Tala. Come on, we're going to call her out. 15 seconds. But you know what? It was very thoughtful. I appreciate you sharing that, Tala. I'll read the transcript. It says that the best thing that she can share is that she's not dealing with fatigue. She's feeling a lot better since the last trip. And I'll tell you why you're happy, Tala. Because you're home. And even though we travel a lot, right? And we've traveled to some very nice places and, you know, nice hotels or whatever. There's nothing like your own bed. I don't care how bad your bed is. There's something about being back home that's a blessing. We're going to read one more comment from Sarah. Before you go, I want to ask you and Emily to keep my family in prayer. Step grandmother passed away this afternoon. We'll pray right now, if you're cool with that. Father, I just speak life over Sarah and her family. Lord, that there's peace, that there's a covering that surrounds them, Lord God, that whatever they're going through emotionally, all the different aspects that may come their way, Lord, that you just send a hedge of protection to be around them. And Lord, we know that the passing and people passing away is a part of life, but Lord, I just ask you to bless Sarah, her family, and whoever's connected to them as well. So we just thank you for that, Lord. And for peace beyond all understanding, we just declare that right now. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. There we go. Words matter, family, and declarations definitely matter. And so one last thing I'll share, and then we'll close it out. We're at the 1 hour mark. Yes, sir. Typically when I have a guest, we'll go over 2 hours, sometimes 3, depending who they are. And John 6:63. John 6:63. It is a spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life. I'll end it with this, family. If anybody's going through something that's a struggle, maybe you're going through a tough chapter, I just want to speak life over you. That whatever situation you're going through, maybe you're going through a very great time, I still want to speak life over you. Because we all go through seasons, we all go through chapters. And I want to continue to speak life over you. And that I appreciate you, that I'm thinking about you. I am legitimately thinking about you. And even though I may not see your face, I don't know what you look like. One of the things that I'm making a very deliberate intention moving forward in all of our socials. For those of you that know me, my wife and I are pastors. We are state leaders for our prayer network based out in Oklahoma City. We are entrepreneurs. We run multiple small businesses to generate income. I've done everything. We've done everything. My wife used to work in a hospital. She was a nurse for 8 years. One of the things in this chapter, even with heading our leadership teams that we've had over the years, one of the things that we are very deliberate in this season is to continue to speak life, and everybody that's connected to me on socials, I do think about you. And I don't want to take it lightly that for those of you that take the time to hang out with me and to consume whatever content I put out there, that I am thinking about you and that I appreciate you and that I do want to speak life over you. And I want the best that God has designed for your life. And I'll throw this out there. If anybody that does not understand what I'm talking about, and you want to get to know this God that I keep talking about, who is this Jesus, and who is this Holy Spirit you're talking about that gives you guidance or helps you with crafting out your speech, or hopefully so, right? I open my doors to, you can call in podcast hotline. You send me a DM, email, go to my website, therealglo.com. You can reach out to me. My wife and I are always open to praying with you and just walking you through chapters if you need. So I want to leave it with that. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for those of you that took the time to listen and downloaded this episode onto your cell phone. So if anybody doesn't know, in 2024 on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I didn't realize this. I totally forgot about it. But if you subscribe to my podcast channels, doesn't matter what it is, that you will get automatic updates sent to your phone without you even knowing about it. When you open it up, oh, there he is. So I want to thank you for those of you that have done that subscribe to my Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube channel. I thank you for that, because it gives me a little bit of assurance that everything I'm sharing with you, it's not on it's on good soil, if you will, if that makes any sense. So that is my closing. Just as a reminder, for those of you that are on Twitter, on X, we hit 200 members in our live stream community page. If you don't know what that is, family, you're on other socials, join us on Twitter. We're going to be doing a product giveaway by Archon Mounts. We're giving away hundreds of dollars worth of prizes and services to celebrate for those of you that have joined our community. The community is just there to help you support you if you want to create content. And the products that I know for sure, we're giving away 3 tripods. They're from Archon Mounts. For all the info, go to my socials. You'll see it. So I just want to make that announcement. Also, I have a few guests lined up. It's going to be fun. I can't tell you who it is yet, as always, because I haven't confirmed an actual time where we can do this. But I got some very interesting guests lined up, and I'm blessed, bro, just to be able to do these conversations and share, just to share with you, to have those uncut, unrehearsed conversations and just share them with you. So thank you to all of my live listeners, audiences. Thank you, Twitch, YouTube, obviously X, which has my most traction. Appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your Sunday, or if you're already on Monday, if you're in New Zealand, kia ora. If you're in Japan, konnichiwa. If you're in America, Samoa, talo falava. Yes, sir. But thank you for your time, guys. I appreciate you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your hearts, your likes, shares, reposts, whatever it is on your social platform. Thank you for being here. On behalf of my family, we love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho. Aloha and mahalo. Yes, sir. Chill. Aloha.